Let's get Schwindy.
How's it going there, YouTube? Coming at you with another video today. In today's talk, I'm going to be going over strapping your amplifiers together, why you would do it, how you would do it, and just clear up some confusion that I've seen across the car audio world. So if you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on those notifications so you don't miss how to take your ride to the next level. Let's get loud. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna draw out a quick diagram of how to strap your amplifiers together. I know there's people here that came for that specific reason, and there's some of you that came to find out, why would you do that? Is there a benefit to strapping versus running a single amp? And we'll get into that afterwards, but I wanna first quickly just draw out the diagram of how you would properly run two amplifiers and strap them together in your system. So here we go. All right, so this is how you would go about actually strapping the two amplifiers together. It's going to be easier to show you on pen and paper here than it would be to actually have the actual amplifiers and try to film everything up close and whatnot. So again, in order to strap two amplifiers together, they need to be the same type of amplifier. You cannot strap two different types of amplifiers together. You're going to create some problems for yourself there. So make sure that they're strappable, number one, and two, they're the same type, same brand, model number, and everything. So you got two amplifiers. You got your master, and you got your slave, okay? Now, either amp can be either one, and they're usually switchable by a switch on the side of the amplifier that says master and slave. So you just pick one to be your master and you pick the other one to be your slave. Okay, now the signal side. You got your head unit, okay, and you got your RCAs coming out of your head unit. Now your RCA signals from your head unit are gonna go in to your master amplifier. All right, now how you connect your signal from the master to the slave is through the actual strapping port. Now, it's either going to be an RCA cable for a simple connection, or sometimes the amplifiers have their own cable that they provide or that is available to strap them together. So what you would do is you would grab the cable, whether, again, it's a RCA type cable, a phone style cable, whatever it is that that manufacturer uses, and connect it from the master going over to the slave, all right? And again, ensuring that the one that you dedicated as your master is switched to master, and the amplifier that you dedicated to slave is switched to slave. And one more important thing to note is that only the settings on your master amplifier are going to be active, meaning your gain settings, your frequency settings, your filters, they're going to become inactive once you switch the other amplifier to slave. So you only need to worry about the master amplifier when setting your gains, filters, and everything else. All right. Now, power, ground, remote, everything is wired the same, whether it's master or slave. So you got your power wire, you got your negative wire, and then you got your remote wire. Okay. You hook those up on both amplifiers, regardless if it's master or slave. Okay. Now, if you're dealing with a monoblock amp, okay, you have a positive and you have a negative speaker output. Okay, we'll do the same here, positive and negative. Now, here's where most people make the biggest mistakes and screw it up. Okay, on your master amplifier, the positive will go to the positive output of your speaker. The positive output of your slave will go to the negative terminal of your speaker. And then the two negatives between your master and slave amplifier, they are actually going to be connected together. All right, so that is how you wire and hook it up. Now, it's important to note that the load, okay, that this needs to see, if these amps are 1 ohm stable, which most monoblock subwoofer amplifiers are 1 ohm stable, you need to make sure that you see a 2 ohm final load here, okay? Don't make the mistake of connecting this to a 1 ohm load. If you do that, then that's like running this amp at a 1/2 ohm and this amp at a 1/2 ohm, which could potentially overheat your amplifiers, go into thermal, or overwork your electrical systems and whatnot. So what you need to do, right, if you're running a 1 ohm stable amp here and a 1 ohm stable amp here, you need to understand that your final ohm load needs to be 2 or no less than 2. So what does that look like? You could be running a single 4 ohm dual voice coil sub wired down to 2 ohms. You can be running 2 DVC 2 ohm subs and wire it in such a way where you're seeing a 2 ohm final load. There's all different kinds of configurations that you can run here, but you want to make sure that you don't drop below a 2 ohm load, okay, unless your amplifiers are stable to do that. Okay, so if you're running amplifiers that are stable to a 1/2 ohm, which some are, I know Crescendo even warrants some of their amplifiers to a 1/2 ohm load. So if you are running amplifiers that are stable at a 1/2 ohm each, then you can run a 1 ohm final load. Okay, but that is the only circumstance where that would dictate.
All right, guys, well, I hope that made sense. Very simple, very clean cut, straightforward. Now, taking it a step further, why would one choose to strap amplifiers together versus running a single big amplifier? You know, let's say you want to run a 5,000 watt system. What would be the benefit of getting two 2,500 watt amps and strapping them together versus running a single 5,000 watt amp? Well, you can always argue that smaller amps are cheaper to replace or repair, which is true. If you have two smaller amps and one fails on you, it'd be a lot cheaper to replace that one than to replace a single bigger amplifier. They're also technically cheaper to work on because if you have to send it in somewhere, keep in mind you got to pay for shipping and then have them fix it and send it back. So it can get expensive if you don't fix things yourself. The biggest reason why I think people strap or don't strap is because of their configuration. So, for example, you can run both strapped or single amp configuration. As you can see back here, I'm running my Crescendo Encore 12K in a single amp setup for my subwoofers. Prior to this build, I was running two 15s and I was running a strap setup before I got my 12K. I had two Sundown SAE 3000s that were running strapped together to give me 6,000 total watts at 1 ohm. But because they were strapped, remember, I had to have a 2 ohm final load. So that's why I had it running strapped, okay? Because my subwoofers were at a 2 ohm final load. Since they were dual 2 ohm subwoofers, right, I could either run it at 2 ohms or I could run it at a 1/2 ohm. And the SAE amps were not stable down to a 1/2 ohm, so I had to run it at 2. Needless to say, the ZV5s that I had were tremendously underworked because they can handle a boatload of power, clean power nonetheless. So what I did was I got the 12K, okay? Now this puts out some mad power. And what I did was I ran it at 2 ohms for a while because a 12K at 2 ohms was pretty much giving me right around where my two SAE 3000s were giving me strapped, okay, together at 1 ohm. So, you know, that was satisfying me for a little bit. But then what happened was I got a third ZV515 dual 2. So right now I got 3 ZV5s running in full parallel. It's seeing about a 0.3, 0.4 ohm final load. And let me tell you, that's pulling some wattage out of that amp there. There is a video that I have where I actually did a burst of 17,000 watts getting pulled out of that amp there. I can get about 15,000, almost 15,000 without touching clipping. That's pretty good, right? Verified by the SMD AMM1. So good stuff here. So yeah, you know, your configuration is going to determine really if you need the strap or not. Like let's say you're coming into this with two dual 2 ohm subs, right? And you can either wire it to a 0.5 ohm load or you can wire it to a 2 ohm load. So your two options would be, well, you can buy an amp that's 1/2 ohm stable, right? And run that low. But there's a lot of things you got to consider when you're running 1/2 ohm too, like upgrading your electrical system, right? High output alternator, make sure that you legit wire in some beefy grounds, beefy power wires. Okay, there's a lot of additional things you got to think about when you're running 1/2 ohm. So something else you can do would be to get two smaller amps and strap them together to run a 2 ohm final load, which will not tax your electrical system as much. Okay, and that's another reason why a lot of people do it, is so that they don't have to run under 1 ohm. So you know, take it for what it's worth. Hopefully this video helped add value to you. to help clear things up a little bit. There's really no right way or wrong way to do it. There's a lot of different ways you can wire things up that's going to be, the most beneficial for your setup and your goals. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to comment down below here. I try to get back to everything within a day. If I miss a question or a comment, I apologize. It's not intentional, but they are flowing in pretty consistently. So with that, again, if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe, turn on those notifications, like this video, and that way you don't miss how to take your ride to the next level. Let's get loud.